Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Day before yesterday, my dad told me off for speaking very quickly. Apparently, it's part of being British. And so I'm going to try and slow it down today and just focus on what matters. And what matters to me, mostly as a teacher and as someone who cares about young people, is education and the educational system. So my talk's called Rebuilding Minds, Rebuilding a Nation, because ultimately building a nation starts with education, in my humble opinion. All right, so before I speak, I just wanted to share a very brief video. It's a reminder that the statistics I'll share aren't just numbers, okay? They're about real children. So when I'm talking about children today, I want you to think in your mind, these are real children we are talking about, real people, okay?
كيف حالكم؟ إن شاء الله طيبين؟ إن شاء الله كويسين؟ بخير وعافية؟ اسمك من وين أنت؟ صديق وأنت؟
محمد.
وأنت؟
أنا اسمي مجاهد.
اسمك مجاهد؟ ما شاء الله ما شاء الله.
ليش أقول بالبلوتوث يا؟
ده تشغل له بالبلوتوث؟ خلاص نشغله إن شاء الله. أنت قاعد تسمع شنو؟
أغاني.
أغاني بيه؟ أصحاب مع بعض؟ كلكم أصحاب؟
أي.
وبتقعدوا هنا طوالي؟
أي.
وجايين من وين أنتوا؟ أنت جيت من وين؟ من سنجة؟
أنا جيت من سنجة.
أنت برضه من سنجة؟ جيت لك كم؟ جيت لك كم؟
6.
6 شهور؟ 6 شهور قاعد وين هنا؟
في أبقى قاعد.
ما شاء الله.
شحن يا.
حنشغل إن شاء الله.
So, the echoes of war in Sudan resonate deepest in the lost opportunities for a generation of children, like Sadiq, like Muhammad, like Mujahid. They've lived their most critical cognitive years, or development years, amidst extreme instability and trauma. Today we stand at a critical juncture, not just to mend buildings, but to rebuild minds and restore hope through education. So education is often overlooked in the immediate aftermath of conflict. Yet it's a critical pillar for sustainable peace building and national development. It's not just a social service, it's a strategic investment in human capital, fostering social cohesion, promoting economic recovery, and preventing the recurrence of violence. Prior to the current conflict, Sudan's education system already struggled. Over 7 million children were out of school, one of the highest global rates. Gender disparities were stark, infrastructure was crumbling, and resources were scarce, leading to overcrowded classrooms and a shortage of materials and trained teachers. And the teachers that were there, sometimes you had issues with retaining those teachers because they were getting paid irregularly and they were getting paid very little amounts. The recent conflict has amplified these challenges exponentially. An estimated 17 to 19 million children are now out of school due to violence, displacement, and destruction. So over 10,400 schools are closed in conflict-affected areas, many repurposed as shelters, further disrupting learning. Widespread violence has caused profound psychological trauma in children, impacting their ability to learn, and the destruction extends beyond school buildings to vital support systems like safe transportation and basic services. Any reconstruction must consider both physical rebuilding and re-establishing a supportive, protective learning environment. So the disruption has severe long-term implications. A generation is being deprived of foundational literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking skills, essential for economic participation and civic engagement. This risks creating what we call a lost generation, who are vulnerable to exploitation, radicalization, and continued violence. Without education, individuals lack the skills to rebuild their lives or participate constructively in peace building. Okay. So current efforts by international organizations like UNICEF involve providing psychosocial support, education and protection, and working to reopen schools. UNESCO coordinates the broader educational response with a funded transitional education plan. but there's a critical funding gap. UNICEF's 2025 appeal for $1 billion has received only a fraction, and they received only, as you can see on the statistic in the board, they've only received 400 million. Despite these efforts, the scale of the crisis is immense, demanding urgent increased intervention. So what I'm going to propose today is just strategies that I think might be used or can be used to address the immediate crisis and lay the groundwork, hopefully, for a more resilient, inclusive, and prosperous Sudan. So here are what I call my pillars of educational reconstruction. There's 5 of them. We begin with fostering inclusive national identity through curriculum, trauma-informed teacher training, reintegrating child soldiers into education, conditional subsidies for independent schools, and ensuring adequate state budget for education. Obviously, these are lots and lots of strategies, and I won't be going through the analysis of how these strategies would work, but they're just ideas, and I would like to encourage you to think about how we might go about implementing them and the kind of funding that we might need in order to implement them. Okay, so first and foremost, we've got promoting an inclusive national identity. Conflict often exacerbates divisions. Education can either perpetuate those or become a tool for unity. Sudan's existing curriculum has been criticized for promoting a singular identity, marginalizing minorities. A post-conflict curriculum must emphasize unity in diversity, mutual respect, and a shared future. Developing this requires a participation effort involving a lot of diverse people. So you need historians, you need educational leaders, you need politicians, you need all of those people, and the community involving parents and what they want their children to learn is really, really important in fostering an inclusive identity. So some of those key strategies might include revising your history textbooks. You might try and integrate peace education and conflict resolution, so include that within the actual curriculum. Promoting cultural and linguistic diversity. There's more than 70 languages in Sudan, so why are we only learning 1 or 2? Something to think about. Developing a civic education program as well can help with ideas on democracy, human rights, and active citizenship, taking part as a young person within politics and education. Right, so our next strategy is trauma-informed teacher training. The profound psychosociological impact of conflict necessitates a paradigm shift into education. We need to move the way we think about education. Teachers must be equipped to address trauma and support students' psychosocial well-being. Children in Sudan have experienced widespread violence and loss, leading to trauma manifesting as anxiety, aggression, and difficulty concentrating, directly impeding their learning. And teachers are in a unique position to identify and support these students, but they also need to have proper training to avoid misinterpreting those behaviors in the classroom as disruptive behaviors, or for them to not feel too overwhelmed. So as a teacher, there's often a feeling of being overwhelmed with the way your students behave. But if you understand where those behaviors are coming from, you are less likely to leave the profession and stay within the profession. So trauma-informed teacher training focuses on creating safe, nurturing learning environments, and your key components might include understanding your trauma's response, the responses of the children that you're teaching. It might involve techniques for de-escalating disruptive behaviors within the classroom. And you are also equipping teachers to connect students with specialized individuals. Because at the end of the day, those teachers within the classroom aren't necessarily specialized in dealing with students who have dealt with trauma. And you also need to think about self-care for teachers. So teachers within themselves might have experienced lots of trauma. How do they deal with their own trauma whilst trying to take care of children is something we need to consider. And then the next one is a bit disheartening in the sense that It is really difficult to think about children as people who have been involved in conflict. They might have contributed to or been recruited to take part in the conflict. So how do we make sure that those children are not left behind? It might be difficult to reintegrate them. It's a challenge to reintegrate them and put them within the educational system, but they are children. They need to understand and know how to overcome what they've been recruited into. So some strategies might include what we call accelerated learning programs, where you have condensed curriculum for older children to catch up quickly, often combining academics with skills, not just learning academics. So you're equipping them with skills that they might be using to go straight into a job, for example, because for those children, it might make more sense for them to start working and earning income instead of being recruited as a soldier. Community sensitization, so we need to think about how the community views these children. They have been soldiers, yes, but how do we overcome that? How do we help them as a community come back into education and become people who can work effectively within the workforce? And you might want to think about allowing those children as well to flexibly enter the educational system and leave the educational system, but easily be able to come back. And that is often a difficult thing for child soldiers. So a successful example of this is Sierra Leone. They made an educational and vocational training central to its disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration programs for former child combatants. In the Democratic Republic of Congo as well, UNICEF combined education, psychosocial support, and family tracing to help this holistic approach to happen. So you're combining education with social support and allowing these children to come back into the educational system or take part in the economics of the country. My next point is about conditional subsidies for independent schools. So in fragile states, with widespread educational disruption, like Sudan, so Sudan has, on multiple occasions over the last few years, since 2017, you've had multiple occasions where children have had to step out of education and then re-enter. But that disruption in itself is difficult and it impedes learning for students. So how do we overcome that is a question. So independent schools often have much greater flexibility, community ties, and resilience. In Sudan, where public infrastructure is severely damaged, they could provide immediate opportunities, but their reliance on fees often excludes the most vulnerable. So how does a government make independent schools consider children who do not have the ability to pay for their education? And for that, I have suggested what we call conditional subsidizing. The government might offer to subsidize, so pay independent schools to take on and enroll students that aren't able to pay for their education. So you might also get them to adhere to your national curriculum and standards. You have a national curriculum and standards that the school has to align to. You have to be really transparent and accountable in order to receive that subsidy. So you have to be auditing how you're spending your money. Is that money being used for personal gain, or is it actually going out to teachers, for example, as extra bonuses in their salary, or is it going to buy new equipment for the school? Oftentimes, subsidies get lost in corruption. And it's very important that we target that and audit that. So last but not least, having an adequate state budget is really, really important. So sustainable education recovery and reform in Sudan hinge on substantial, consistent financial commitment from the state, complemented by international support. Without adequate funding, even innovative policies will fail. So I might have this great idea about how to fix the educational system, but at the end of the day, if we don't have the funding to do that, it's not going to go anywhere. So in post-conflict context, education provides the skilled workforce for reconstruction and economic diversification. Conversely, if you're underinvesting into education, it creates or perpetuates poverty and unrest, thereby undermining any peace-building efforts that you put in. So the reconstruction of Sudan's education system is not merely recovery, it's a fundamental act of nation building. The proposed 5 pillars form a cohesive framework for transformation. These solutions are interconnected. Success in one area reinforces progress into others, and the ability to fund these initiatives is the ultimate enabler. By embracing these solutions, Sudan can transform its educational crisis into a profound opportunity for national renewal. Education is a powerful tool for social cohesion, economic recovery, and individual healing. Rebuilding minds through strategic, inclusive, and well-resourced education is not just about restoring what was lost. It is about building a new foundation for a unified, resilient, and peaceful Sudan. And that's all from me. Thank you.